Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 31st edition of Humans of VIT, a part of the Weekly Edge, our weekly newsletter. Today, we have with us Shreya Voletti, who is a second year student studying computer science with bioinformatics. Hi, Shreya, and welcome back.
Hi.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
our theme today is majoritarianism and its impact on pluralism. I
Okay.
want to start things off with a question. Eminent Indian economist and philosopher, and he's also a Nobel laureate who won the Nobel Prize for Economics, Amartya Sen, has said, and I quote, things have gone pretty badly wrong. It has taken a quantum leap in the wrong direction. And separately, he also said that there is a connection between Hindutva psychology and exclusion. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I think pluralism in general is very difficult to achieve, especially in a country like India, where everyone is very deeply connected to their faith. There was an article, I think, in the Weekly Edge itself, which was published a couple of weeks ago, where they spoke about how there are certain countries around the world where people, even if they ascribe to different faiths, are not that religious to start with. So, in a country like India, especially when the demographics are so set as to how many people are Hindu and how many of them are, belonging to different religions, it's always tricky. And when a ruling government um, let's just say when a ruling government has been seen repeatedly favoring a certain, building their ethos, building their campaign around one particular religious philosophy, that is bound to, in a way, rival the idea of pluralism in India. Now, do I think what the quote you cited, even though I really respect the man himself and I have read his work in the past, do I think it's a little extreme? Perhaps I do, because I still believe that we are one of the few countries that has managed to keep some semblance of balance, even if it is fragile, among people of different faiths and communities. Nevertheless, I see the impetus of what he's saying, and I see that happening. We all see that happening. That discourse has sort of come through, and now when one would come forward and say, I don't really think this is right. It's typically, those people are typically labeled as, let's say, woke and favoring the minorities at the cost of the majority, even though there is no such thing as favoring a minority at the cost of the majority. The majority never bears the costs of anything. That is why they're the majority and the privileged. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. While you were giving this answer, I thought of another question, but then you answered that also in this. So I'm just moving on to the next question that I
Yeah.
have. Okay, given the fact that you belong to the majority religion in India, so does your social standing sometimes blind you to the oppression faced by minorities? And in addition to that, the ruling party, which is the BJP, has has somewhat tailored its policies to the Hindutva ideology, and it's not that it's very subtle or anything. They're
Mm-hmm.
publicizing the fact that it's tailored in such a manner. So how does that affect the privilege that you receive in society, if at all it affects?
I would say that, in an ivory tower, if we had an ivory tower of, the people who are based in the foundation of whom we are all standing on, I would consider myself to be at the very, very top of the ivory tower. I don't know. Like sometimes I think that I'm living in such a bubble when it comes to my social privilege. I'm a Hindu. I mean, I would like to say I'm a Hindu Brahmin living in India, which means that I'm at the very top of privilege when it comes. Probably the only thing that would deprive me of some amount of privilege is the fact that I'm a woman and nothing else. So living in India, especially with everything that you've mentioned, of course we're living in our own bubble. Even while we engage about minorities and affirmative action and what are they facing and is their right to faith under threat and are we discriminating against them when it comes to education? This conversation, even while we do it, we have no stakes in it. And that troubles me sometimes, even while I talk about it, that ultimately it's not going to affect me. Ultimately, say tomorrow the government comes out with a policy that will obviously discriminate against minorities. I'm not saying that they will, but if they do, then it's still not going to affect me. I might go out into the streets, I might protest it, but I don't have the same stakes as someone else, as someone belonging to those minorities. And being aware of that, I also think is equally important for people talking about these things repeatedly. And has it blinded me? I would say so. I would say there is so much offensive humor that I forgive when my friends make jokes or when I see it on the television or when I see it in a movie. I forgive it because again, I have no stakes in it. I forgive some very offensive things that people say regarding extremism when it comes to the minorities, because again, I have no stakes in it. So this is just how I feel those with privilege talk, and they get offended when they're pointed out for that thing, including me. So yeah.
Okay, to just like based on what you said, I have one small question.
Yeah.
So how do you think this, like you said that you were blinded by say
Hmm.
blinded by privilege. So how do you think the way information works in today's world, how do you think that
Right.
affects it? Like we all of us are aware of Instagram's algorithms, like all social media algorithms,
Yeah.
where people are reading and consuming only the information that will strengthen their existing beliefs. So how do
Right.
you think that affect? Does it, if at all? I mean, does it affect
Right.
it?
Right.
And then,
Right.
if yes, how does it affect?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I think there was an Aaron Sorkin quote where one person says, people choose the opinion they want these days. The other says, no, they choose the facts they want these days. It isn't perspective of information; it's the information that is being fed to you itself. And anything can be taken out of context and presented to you as the truth, and you will take it, especially when it fits your pre-existing bias, right? And what Instagram does, I would say, what almost all AI algorithm stuff do these days is what you want to read, you get, and what you've been reading, you get more of it. And even newspapers and print media also does that. They know which demographic they're catering to, and they zero in on that, which is why it is so difficult sometimes when you're even trying to present an opinion to even cite a source, because you don't even know anymore what the truth is, and that heavily affects the way we talk about two communities. A slightly, let's say, left-leaning newspaper would, in a particular scenario, side heavily with, let's say, the minorities, and those who might not be left leaning will side very heavily with the majority and with the privileged. And when you only get black and white information, and there's no semblance of, there's no merging there, you have to pick a side. You can't get normal sane news. You choose, do you want left leaning news or right leaning news, or don't read the news at all. And that's unfortunate, but that's how it is.
Okay, okay. So I mean, it's a pretty good answer. Like, let's move on to the next. I think the last question that I have.
Sure.
What do you think is the impact of stereotypes that are often popularized by the majority, and like what are
Right.
the impacts on exclusion and pluralism?
Right. Again, I would, if you watched Jojo Rabbit, which is a very popular film that Taika Waititi directed regarding the Holocaust, and it's essentially about this child who's being taught that Jews are monsters, right? And they are. It's supposed to be a movie where the child is heightening everything in his head, but that's essentially how stereotypes work. There's the in group, and then there's the out group, and that's the function of a stereotype, to define people into compartments. And when popular media, whether that's film or books or news, journalism, whatever you consume, caters to those stereotypes, you automatically assume that that's how everything works. And even now, even normally, we make so many jokes about, people belonging to different states and regions and communities. Some of them are harmless, but some of them belie some very scary biases that we have, which personally, to me, goes against the unity and diversity policy that we like to preach in India. And what I think the best way, but at the same time, there's the idea that, well, stereotypes come from somewhere. You've obviously observed some people do a certain thing, and that's why they stem from that. What I like to say is that's untrue. In, let's say, the States, okay, if one white person is insane, we don't automatically say all white people are insane. But those belonging to a minority community, let's say Muslims in America or African American people in America, are constantly having to prove that they don't belong to their community, that they are different, because stereotypes apply to those without privilege more strongly than they do with those with. And that is the problem. And the only way we can overcome this is to subvert stereotypes in popular media, is to go around it. And I would also say humor, comedy, the way we write jokes, that's a strong way of how messaging goes through. Comedians have a lot of power in that regard, even if they say, oh, well, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Jokes are perhaps more powerful than a politician with a mic saying something that pertains to a particular community. And as long as there is a joke made by the in, by the for the in group at the expense of what you term as an out group, it's going to persist. So, in all forms, everywhere, there needs to be a change in the way we view what is community, what is caste, what is religion, race, gender, all of that. That needs to change, I would say.
Okay, that brings us to the end of Humans of VIT for this edition. Please check out our newsletter on our website, and you can find all the details on our Instagram page. Please follow that as well. If you would like to feature in a Humans of VIT interview, please contact us. Thank you very much. Have a great day ahead.